welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for September the 5th of 2020. Of course, my name is Samuel Adams, and this is a daily gaming news podcast meant to bring you the hottest news you need to know from around the industry. Hosted on YouTube and podcast services around the world 5 days a week, it is your one-stop shop for everything you need to know. So if you enjoyed the show and you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and keep coming back for more. However, this is of course a rare Saturday show. They are becoming more frequent as my life becomes more hectic, but ultimately what happened is that my streaming PC that I normally record on, it was put into a different case. When I put it into another case, it didn't work properly. I had to reinstall Windows. Then the PC itself was just slower, so I ended up just getting rid of it. I'm selling off the components on eBay, and we're back down to a single PC setup because I don't stream enough to warrant having two PCs. Sorry to those that are fans of the streams. But with that being said, there is still plenty of news to dive into that broke during the last day of the work week. Specifically, our headliner, The Witcher 3, is getting ported to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. The beloved 2015 role-playing game, The Witcher 3, will get a next-gen port that includes faster load times, development studio CD Projekt Red announced this morning. The expansive open-world RPG has no release date, but come on, this is the next gen, where there are no release dates for anything. In its announcement, CD Projekt notes that the new PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X versions will feature a range of visual and technical improvements, including ray tracing and faster load times across the base game, both expansions, and all extra content. That last part is particularly good news, given that respawning in the game can take a minute or so, at least on this author's PlayStation 4. While the next-gen version will be sold as its own thing, CD Projekt promises that people who currently own the game on console or PC will be able to get a free upgrade to the new version. Asked for clarity about that and whether you need to own all of the DLC, a rep told Kotaku, quote, "The update will work with any physically or digitally purchased copy of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt for Xbox One, PC, or PS4, including both the launch and Game of the Year/Complete Edition versions. That sounds like you don't need to own the DLC or so-called complete version of the game to upgrade, although it is not 100% clear if you would then need to buy the expansions for the next-gen version." We also asked if save files will transfer from old gen to new. No answer about that yet. CD Projekt's next game, Cyberpunk 2077, is scheduled for release on current gen Xbox and PlayStation consoles later this year, and will also have a next gen version. Saves will transfer from the Xbox One to Xbox Series X version of that game, according to an official blog post, which leads many to believe it's probably going to be the case for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, with that being said, why is this such a big deal? Because The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is a monumental game, and it is incredibly important for the history of gaming overall because it essentially set a new benchmark for what people expect in terms of storytelling in RPGs, in terms of character building, in terms of combat even. People love The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and so to see it getting ported to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X is not really a shocker, but it is very significant because that means this game is going to continue to sell very, very, very well. And in a lot of ways, CD Projekt Red has a Skyrim on their hands. They could keep porting The Witcher 3 to new pieces of hardware as they roll out and continue to rake in the money because it has achieved that level of notoriety. It is essentially another Skyrim, and that's pretty cool for the team at CD Projekt Red, because they need all the money they can get. CD Projekt Red has spent over $121 million developing CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077. In a new corporate report, the development studio stated they have spent over $121 million developing Cyberpunk 2077, as well as some other unannounced projects. This also includes the development of a multiplayer mode that is coming to Cyberpunk 2077, as well as the new Witcher game that was sort of announced. On top of that, spending on the game's projects has gone up 77% to, of course, 111 million PLN in the first half of 2020, mainly due to the delay of the game. It was also stated that there are currently two separate teams at CD Projekt Red. One is finishing up Cyberpunk, while the other is on the Witcher series made up of Gwent, Thronebreaker, and that new mobile title that was announced a few weeks ago. And now we can assume that is also going to be regarding the Witcher 3 port that is coming to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, as well as the update that is coming to PC. Now, Cyberpunk 2077 is set to release later this year on November the 19th for current-gen consoles and PC, and it's also going to be coming to PS5 and Xbox Series X as a free upgrade for those that have bought the current-gen versions. So, this game is very expensive to make, and that's not really a shock to anybody because it is so ambitious. This is a game that has so much potential and that has so much excitement behind it that it really does need to be done well. And if you look at the footage that has been shown off, the events that have been hosted, it looks like it's coming along quite well. Personally, I'm going to be diving in on PC later this year, and I cannot wait to see it on that new 3080 graphics card. Looking forward to that, baby, and some ray tracing in CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077. But we could be getting some really cool graphics and gameplay from Prince of Persia next week, because a remake is supposedly in the works. A recent Guatemalan listing stoked excitement about a potential Prince of Persia remake. Now, rumor has it that Ubisoft plans to announce the project during the next Ubisoft Forward, which is scheduled for September the 10th. These details come courtesy of Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, who spoke at length about Ubisoft in yesterday's episode of the Triple Click podcast. During the show, at roughly the 32-minute mark, Schreier noted the following. They had been planning a new Ubisoft Forward where they were going to announce a bunch of games like the Prince of Persia remake that was leaked a couple of weeks ago. That event is planned, it was announced today, as being for next week, September the 10th. Throughout this year, there has been no shortage of Prince of Persia related news. However, none of it has fans of the franchise brimming with excitement. We'll talk about that more in a moment. That's the opinion of the author here at PlayStation Lifestyle. The first of such instances took place back in March, where a Prince of Persia event ran for a limited time in For Honor. Footage of a canceled game surfaced not too long ago thereafter, then was later followed by the announcement of an on-site VR escape room, the Dagger of Time. Suffice it to say, news of a remake would undoubtedly please many a fan. According to Schreier, the real question is whether or not Ubisoft will address the drama surrounding Tom Clancy's Elite Squad. This particular matter revolved around a video for the mobile title that many considered insensitive towards the Black Lives Matter movement. Might the publisher make mention of it or avoid the topic altogether, as it did with the abuse allegations during its Ubi Forward event in July? We will know in less than 1 week's time. Now, going back to the sentence that talks about the disappointment of fans, I think that fans were actually pretty excited about that footage of the canceled game. And so I think that really speaks to a lot of the hype around this Prince of Persia game when it does inevitably get announced, because I think there's a very dormant fan base there. I think that there is a group of people that has nostalgia for Prince of Persia, and in a world where there are people that are really wanting that classic old school Assassin's Creed style gameplay, there could be a space for a Prince of Persia comeback if it does take that route. Of course, we know nothing as of right now, but it seems that Prince of Persia could take the spotlight at next week's Ubisoft Forward. Personally, I'm still hoping for some Splinter Cell myself, but I'm not holding my breath on that one. Now, to round out today's show, Nintendo has confused everyone by putting Pikmin 3 back up on the Wii U eShop. Dozens will rejoice. Nintendo did frustrating Nintendo things last month when it delisted the Wii U version of Pikmin 3 alongside the announcement of the new Pikmin 3 Deluxe for Nintendo Switch. That's just kind of how Nintendo rolls though. The same thing happened with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze when it was due to get a Switch re-release. But now, because there are no rules and nothing makes sense, Pikmin 3 is back on the Wii U eShop. It is one of the $20 Nintendo Selects just like it was before. Everything is back to normal, save for the 30 days when you couldn't actually buy a digital version of it for the old console. Kind of a weird development considering how games in similar situations, like the aforesaid Tropical Freeze, were never relisted. The good news for the very small number of people this affects, seriously, I'm sure there will be more comments on this article than Pikmin 3 Wii U sales today, as they again have the opportunity to buy the game 7 years later. It's better news for anyone scratching their head that nonsensical anti-consumer business moves. This is more of a follow-up than anything, very strange, and it seems like Nintendo might have seen some of the frustrations, some of the outrage around the Pikmin 3 move, but it seemed like all of this had kind of calmed down. But I did want to bring it up because if you do want to play Pikmin 3 on the Wii U instead of the Nintendo Switch, then you now have the opportunity to go back and do so if you do want to. But that rounds out today's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoyed this one, drop me a like down below, and in the comments section, let me know what you think about everything we talked about here today. But specifically, will you be playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on next-gen hardware? I would love to hear your thoughts on how that port is going to go. But until tomorrow, you guys have a fantastic rest of your night. I'll talk to you soon, and peace.